Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa with Pixie Dust Adventures. And if you are planning a vacation, you are going to want to listen to this. It's absolutely a necessity for you to learn about this. We are going to talk about vacation protection insurance for your trip. I don't get anything from this. I'm not into selling insurance. I'm not an insurance agent, but I want you to have it. I buy it for all my trips. Stay tuned and listen to why I buy it. Hear some of my stories and educate yourself so you can make the best decision for your vacation. Hi, everybody. I am Melissa with Pixie Dust Adventures, and today I'm going to talk to you about something that maybe isn't the most exciting about your trip, but is still very, very important, and that is travel insurance. I have a story about a family one time who went to Disney World, and they were on their way to the theme parks, and they were involved in a drunk driver accident. It was really super bad. And the good news is, before I get too into this, they survived. So the whole family survived. Everything's okay. This was a number of years ago. But they were taken flight for life to the hospital. So I had to get involved with this. At this point, their trip was non-refundable because it was right over the trip. And again, we have medical involved in that as well. This could happen in the United States. It could happen in another country. But travel insurance is something that helps you because not only did they have medical bills at the end of this that were piling up, but they had job loss. So they had lost wages and lost income. Now, I'm not telling you what insurance is going to cover as far as income and medical bills, but at least for sure the insurance would have covered their trip. So they wouldn't have been out the thousands of dollars for their vacation. And then insurance a lot of times gets involved in medical bills and other things depending on your policy and the circumstance. So I have an expert in insurance here with me today. This is Lisa. I've known her for a very long time, and I want to tell you that Lisa is honestly here to give you honest information. We both want you to buy insurance, whether you buy it through me or a third party. I buy it for all of my vacations, and I really, really think you should too. And I'm asked all the time, why should I buy insurance and what does it cover? You can buy insurance through your vacation package, or you can get it through a third party, which is where Travel Insured comes in. And you can get it through me. And I'm going to put a link down below in the comments and in the description. So if you want to click around and explore insurance policies through Travel Insured, you can click that link. You can buy your policy, or hopefully you can contact me to help you plan your vacation. All right. I'm going to ask Lisa a question here and let her take it away because she's the real expert. She's the one you're here to listen to. Lisa, what is travel insurance?
Hey, Melissa. So first of all, thanks for having me. This is, a great opportunity for us to work together and just really highlight the importance to your clients, to the travelers when they're going on their vacations. And honestly, travel insurance, I describe it as there's two sides to the coin. The first piece of travel insurance, or some people say travel protection, is that you want to cover your financial investment. So, we all work hard, we save our money, we plan for these wonderful trips. In some cases, they can cost a significant amount of money, and you want to make sure that if something happens and you can no longer go, you're not going to lose your money. So one piece of it is protecting against cancellation so that your money is safe. The other side of the coin then is once you go on the trip, so once you have departed, and kind of like the story you just said, that if something happens on your trip, you have help, you have support, and you have all of those benefits and coverage while you're on your trip. Things like a trip delay benefit. So, you get delayed, you incur additional costs for a hotel, for transportation, for food, you can claim that back. Things like baggage delay. You arrive at your destination, your bag does not, you need to purchase additional things, you have baggage coverage. The big stuff then, of course, as you kind of already referred to, is that medical coverage. And for me personally, that is where travel protection is worth its weight in gold. Nobody ever expects those things to happen. You never expect to be in a car accident. You never expect your family member to trip and fall and break a hip, or I could name so many things that could happen. And that's the whole premise of insurance. You want to have that peace of mind, that protection, so that if the worst thing happens on vacation, you at least have help, support, and funds. That's the big thing. Losing a vacation, that would suck, losing the cost of a trip. But having a medical bill from an international company that or an international country, that can add up pretty quickly. That can be a life-changing event where you have those medical bills. So having your travel protection in place is just full peace of mind, and we're here to help and support. That is the crux of travel protection.
Absolutely. That you've just hit it on the head right there. That's why I buy insurance for every single one of my trips. Even if it's a media event and I don't have maybe the cost of the trip, but medical coverage is very important. On our very recent cruise on the Disney Treasure, there was a passenger that was taken flight for life by a helicopter off the ship, and I hope he had
Reality is
insurance.
that, yeah, the reality is it happens. And look, nobody ever wants insurance until they actually need it. That's the thing. And the ideal scenario is that you have a policy, you have protection, and you never need to use it because that means that nothing happened unplanned on your trip. But the whole point of insurance is that you are protecting against the unexpected, the unforeseen, the unplanned for. And trust me, that is the day that you will be very happy that you purchased travel protection when you have that help and support.
Absolutely. I had some clients one time stuck in Mexico. Now this was over COVID, but they had tested positive for COVID, so they weren't allowed to fly back into the United States at the time. And it was too close to their flights to get flights canceled, transfers canceled, and things like that. So they remained in Mexico until they were allowed to come home. But where insurance came in later on down the road with the appropriate paperwork, I'm not promising anything, but with the appropriate paperwork and filing their claim, the insurance was able to cover their flights that were non-refundable and expenses
Well,
for
well, the
things.
thing now is, obviously COVID is several years ago, so it's the protocols and restrictions are slightly different.
Mhm.
But we literally treat that now just as a normal medical condition. So if a client gets sick in Mexico, whether it's COVID or something else, and they are medically unfit or medically unable to return home as originally planned, we would cover for that. So COVID now is just it's a standard illness, kind of like any others. It's changed since the 2020. But yeah, again, that's exactly what it's for. If you no one expects not to be able to come home from their trip, but if you are really unwell, you're under medical care, and those medical professionals are saying you are not fit to fly home.
I like to share stories with people because people
Yes.
say, what is going to happen? But one of my stories is an acquaintance of mine. She did not book her vacation through me, but she knew I was a travel advisor. So she contacted me because she was in Cancun in an all-inclusive resort, and her son ended up with appendicitis. So he went to the hospital, and the doctors there actually refused to treat him until they got payment up front, and that was $40,000. Now, and Lisa can maybe speak a little bit to this. I'm
Yes.
not saying that the insurance is going to step in and clearly cover that. Typically, insurance is you file a claim later on for expenses that you have incurred. But that was very frightening for this mother. And in Mexico, they don't give free medical care.
Living in the US who have medical care with their employer, some people don't realize that that doesn't work outside the US. Mexico is not the US. So it's also just, if you think you are protected, it's still worth having a conversation because it may not be the case. But yes, that scenario happens quite frequently in Mexico, other Caribbean islands. Basically, with our plans, and again, there's several different choices. So I always recommend people, you need to look at the plan that you are choosing so that you understand the benefits specifically in each plan. For example, we have an essential plan. The medical coverage on that is called secondary medical. On the deluxe and the platinum plan, the medical coverage is primary medical coverage. That is my recommendation. Make sure that you purchase a plan that has primary medical. Now, in that situation where a medical facility is looking for prepayment, we have a 24/7 global assistance company. Obviously, the first point is to seek medical care. The second thing is to call our 24/7 assistance company. You will be assigned like, a caseworker who will work with you through the whole situation. So if it's a case that maybe you need to be moved to a different medical facility, we will know the ones that we work with in that area. If it's a smaller situation, let's say someone just needs some stitches or maybe, they need a cast on their arm and it's a couple $100. The quicker thing is definitely to just pay that bill, keep all of the invoices and file the claim when they return home. If it is a more extreme medical situation, there's a significant amount of money being requested. That is where the support and assistance team will step in. So there is situations where we may pay up front. We may send just a bank guarantee or a credit card guarantee to the facility, but they are all one-to-one cases. Every scenario is slightly different. So we advise anyone to work with our assistance team and they will work out the best way to handle that situation with the priority is getting you the medical care that you need.
Absolutely. That's so important, especially if you're traveling internationally. And don't forget, when you're on a cruise, just because you leave from the United States doesn't mean that your medical care is going to come from the United States.
And then,
So,
like you were saying, that person that had to be life flighted off the cruise,
mhm.
that's probably just taking them to the nearest point on land. They might still have to be moved again to a suitable medical facility. So there's just so many things that may happen depending on the severity of the situation, what exact condition it is and what treatment they need. And again, that's rare. It doesn't happen to everybody. But if it happens to you, you want to make sure that you have help. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. And even for the small stuff, always keep a paper trail. But I know we've been delayed long enough that it followed the policy because there
Mhm.
are delay requirements. But
Yes.
we were delayed overnight where we had to have a hotel and food, and it wasn't a big expense, but I had purchased insurance for my trip anyway. So
Yes.
I filed that claim and we were reimbursed for the hotel and the food. It made it sting a little bit less.
A little bit less. Yeah, and that's the thing, like you referred to. I mean, for example, let's say our platinum plan, that is the highest level of coverage that we offer at Travel Insured. The trip delay benefit, that kicks in at the 3 hour timeline. So once you are delayed 3 hours or more, you have access to those benefits. Again, it all, you have to look at the plan verbiage. It does depend on the reasons for the delay. But once it's a covered reason, 3 hours. So, pretty quickly, that any expense you're going to be able to claim back. Compare that to our deluxe plan. That delay timeline is 6 hours. So, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer before those benefits would be applicable. Coming back to that medical conversation that we had, for example, our platinum plan, that's the highest level we offer. The medical coverage on that plan is $500,000. So that's huge. The deluxe plan, the medical benefit there is 250,000. Again, that is still very robust, but it's not 500,000. So my advice always, and I know, nobody loves to read an insurance document, I do understand, but it's in your benefit to really just look at some of those key coverages so that you understand, how much is covered, what are the timelines, what are the covered reasons. It's all in there. So, and I know, Melissa, as a travel advisor, you are not a licensed insurance person. So that's what we're here for. Your clients are very welcome to call us. They're still booking with you, but they can come to us and clarify any questions they have. If there's a particular scenario that they're concerned about, if this happens, will I be covered? My advice is they can speak directly with Travel Insured. We'll give them guidance.
Right. I always encourage people to call the insurance directly for
Yes.
coverage questions.
Yes.
Absolutely 100%. And there is a timeline to buy insurance. So tell us a little bit about when do you recommend purchasing insurance for a trip?
In theory, you can actually still purchase insurance quite late. However, the ideal thing is that you want to be covered for any pre-existing medical conditions, meaning that if you have a known health condition, then something happens related to that condition, you are still going to be covered if you can no longer go on your trip. In order to have that particular coverage, my advice is book the plan at the same time that you book the trip. There is a time sensitive period. Again, it depends on the plan that you choose, but really it's usually around the 14-day mark. So you want to issue the plan within 14 days of booking the trip. to make sure that you do have that pre-existing coverage. If you book later on, you would still have the coverage that's detailed in the particular plan. You just would not be covered for pre-existing.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me. So I'm going to ask you this because I kind of have had these situations and I know a little bit of the answer to it. But some people say, well, my trip is fully refundable now. So why would I buy insurance? Obviously, you want to cover those pre-existing conditions, but what if they cancel later on down the road and their deposit is refunded? What happens to that insurance policy? What can they do with that?
Okay, so if it's fully refundable forever, then you probably don't need to protect a dollar amount. Usually everything becomes non-refundable at a certain point, even if it's, 3 days prior to travel or, 72 hours. At some point, most things do become completely non-refundable. So you need to look at the what you're booking and is that the case? The other option is, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's two sides. One is protecting financial risk, and then the other is protecting you on your trip. If it turns out that there is no financial risk, you can have what we phrase as a medical only plan. Some other people call it a post-departure plan. So really you have all of the benefits and coverage while you're traveling, but you're not protecting a dollar amount with the trip. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
However, if they protect the dollar amount for the trip, let's take an example here. Walt Disney World. Somebody has paid their $200 deposit. They bought
Mhm.
insurance because they wanted pre-existing condition coverage and trip coverage for the cost of the trip.
Yeah.
But later on, they cancel the trip and they get back the $200 deposit. So they have this insurance policy still that's in limbo. However, in the past, when I've had that, I've been able to move that insurance policy to another trip. So if
Yes,
they,
yeah, that's true. You can modify our plans right up until the day before travel. So yes, if they originally had a trip, they're no longer going to go on those dates. They've gotten their deposit back, so there's no reason to file a claim. You can change those travel dates to the future trip. That change just needs to be done before the original dates pass. You have to change it before the original trip date. Otherwise, if the dates pass, we assume that you went on the trip, the policy is finished. So you can make that change, but just do it, before the original dates pass.
and I've had to provide proof of cancellation as well. So
Yes.
somebody can't just say, well, I don't want to use this policy for this trip anymore. I'm going to go, but I'm going to use it on another trip. That
Yeah, so
doesn't,
with insurance as well, with us, when a client selects a policy, we have what's called a 14-day free look period, meaning within those first 14 days, if they change their mind or now they're not going to go on the trip at all, they can let that policy go. We will issue a refund. After the 14-day free look, the policy is locked in. So there you can still make changes, you can modify, but there would not be a refund at that point. So,
that's fair enough. And that's always a good thing to remember. If people are concerned about that pre-existing condition coverage, go ahead and buy insurance.
yeah,
And then you can
lock it
call
in.
travel insured, ask your questions within 14 days. If you decide it's
Yes.
not for you, we can cancel the
The other
policy.
thing as well with insurance, the whole point of insurance, at any given point, you want to protect your risk. So even though the trip may be a total of $10,000, but today I am only paying a $1,000 deposit. Right now, and assuming it's a non-refundable deposit, that's my only risk today. So I can issue a plan, get it in place within the timeline just to cover my $1,000. And then as and when I pay more money, I move into more penalties, I can adjust my plan to cover the higher amount. So there is still a lot of flexibility. But as you say, my advice, get the plan in place at the time you book the trip. That is just the best case scenario across the board. You can always make changes, modify, increase the coverage as we move on.
Right. That's a good suggestion. Increase the coverage. Your premium would also go up with it,
Yeah,
but that's
it would,
okay.
yes. Yeah, once you're prepared for that. Yeah.
Right. I have one other question that's super
Okay.
frequent. Flights. So flights, should people say, should we cover our flights or shouldn't we cover our flights? Because if you're flying and your flights are canceled or you cancel them and you are issued a future flight voucher by that airline, that's not considered a non-refundable item, so insurance is
No,
settled.
because you haven't really lost, like, you haven't gotten physical cash, but you have a voucher that you're not out of pocket, you have for the future. So yes, there's two ways that you can look at this. Let's say whatever, it's a Southwest flight and that's the hub where you live. So chances are high that you're going to use a Southwest credit in the future. That's fine. Then you don't need to cover the flight cost. You know that if something happens, you'll have credit, you'll fly Southwest again. Let's say maybe you have a trip it's on Air Tahiti, and you're not really sure that if this trip doesn't happen, that you may not be going back to Tahiti. You just don't know that yet. Then I would recommend that you do cover the flights, but you may have to go to the airline and decline that future credit. You would have to show and have that in writing confirmed from the airline. You have to show that you did not receive something for it so that you are at a loss, and then insurance would step in to make you whole. So
So
does that make sense?
it does. And so now that people have that knowledge, they can decide whether
Yeah,
they
they can
want to cover
decide
the flights.
exactly. Yeah, will I likely use this credit again? If so, you're not too concerned. You would just maybe protect the land portion or the cruise portion of the trip. Yeah.
Right. So, as you know, I'm a big pet person. Recently flew home with me a brand new little cute fuzzy puppy. And he's adorable and we love him. And
Why is he not on this call? That would get more
I know,
people.
because you wouldn't get any talking done if he, but I'll
Oh,
pop up a picture of him here so everyone
oh,
can see him.
yeah.
But we love our pets and they're a big concern when we're traveling, and especially if maybe we have an aging pet or something, I don't know, some kind of concern. With travel insured, and I don't know that they're the only one that I know of that offers a pet bundle.
Yes.
So there's all kinds of different bundles, but I know pets are super popular. Maybe Lisa
Yeah.
can talk about that.
So again, depending on which plan you select, so you're always going to, I mentioned the essential, the deluxe is that mid-range, and then the platinum is our highest coverage. So depending on which plan you decide is the one you want, from there you have these flexible add-ons or bundles that you can add to your plan. What's nice about these is they're just more tailor-made. So it's specific to certain cases, certain scenarios. And it also means that you're not paying for certain things that are just not applicable to you. So again, depending on which plan, we have up to 8 different bundles. Some of them are, for example, there's a car rental bundle. So if you know that you're going to be doing a fly drive vacation, you could add your car rental coverage. There's an extreme sports, so some people we cover like normal scuba, normal snorkeling as standard, but for example, if people want to scuba dive below a certain depth, so if they're a bit more into it, maybe a bit more kind of professional, they want to go below a certain depth, that's not covered in a normal plan, so they could add on the extreme sports coverage. But really, kind of the most popular ones we're seeing are, as you mentioned, the pet bundle. So this basically covers you, it adds cancellation and interruption coverage if something happens, if your pet gets sick, gets injured, or passes away. So cancellation, obviously referring to before you go on the trip. So something happens and now you can't travel. Interruption means when you're on your trip and something happens to your pet. And I do kind of joke, but just to clarify, in the verbiage of the plan, we do define a pet as a cat or a dog or a registered service animal. So, I've had questions about farm animals and all sorts of other things, but that's the one thing with insurance. If you have a question, it's going to be written and defined in the plan. So I always recommend that you read and understand the plan. But yes, it's so popular. We launched it last December. For some people, it's just not relevant, and for other people, it's an absolute game changer to have that peace of mind for your pet. Another big bundle that I do want to highlight, it's called the cancellation and interruption for any reason. So basically this means, so I just said within a plan, you're always going to have definitions. Depending on which plan you've purchased, you will have a list of black and white written covered reasons for cancellation. So if one of these things happen, you are covered. Cancel for any reason means that you can literally cancel for any reason outside of that list. So it just gives you much more flexibility and control that if you just decide you don't want to go anymore, you're going to have that flexibility. We cover, with that benefit, it covers up to 75% of the trip cost. And another good example I have of that, let's say, you have a family, there's kids. Maybe they are in some kind of a sports tournament and they've done better than maybe you anticipated. Now they're coming, they're going to be in the final. The date conflicts with your vacation. That would not be a covered reason to cancel. But if you have canceled for any reason, it gives you that flexibility to make those changes. You could cancel, you would get up to 75% back. So some of those add-ons are worth looking at. As I say, depending on your own individual situation, what's going to work best for you.
Right. And then your premium is non-refundable. So cancel for any reason. A lot of times you see it as CFAR abbreviated, but once you file a claim for your trip, the premium
No, I mean that
that
would
you don't
work the
get that
same as
back.
your
Just so
health
people know.
insurance, your car insurance. I mean, you always, you pay the premium, but then everything else you claim separately. Yeah.
I'm going to circle back around to this, Lisa, because I was on a river cruise in Europe one time, and there were several families that did not get their bags. They were trying to track them with Apple AirTags, but one of the families didn't get their bags all the way until the end of the trip. And that is super stressful not to have any
It
clothes. But tell me, there's a special service that Travel Insured has that can help you with your bags.
Yes, absolutely. So we have partnered with a company called Blue Ribbon Bags. This is automatically included in your plan. So when you see the price, it's not an add-on. You automatically have it when you purchase a plan with us. And basically it means that yes, if you get to your destination, you come off the plane and your bag does not arrive, it's not the end of the world, but it does suck. We've all been there. You spend all your time planning and packing and then your bag doesn't arrive. It's awful. So all you would need to do is in the airport, go to the baggage handling desk and file a report. Again, paperwork is always king. So you'll have a report, you'll have a tracking number. Then you provide that tracking number to Blue Ribbon Bags and they will do all the work for you from there. They will liaise with the airline, they will track down the bag, and they will expedite getting it to the traveler. So it's just, again, it's that help, it's that support, it's having someone to talk to on the phone and step in and help you when you are in a foreign country, you're trying to rush to make it to your cruise, you're on a transfer, you don't want to run up your phone bill with international data. So you just make that one call to Blue Ribbon and then they're going to stay on the phone with the airline. They're going to work it out for you. So it's just another layer of service and support.
And I don't know of a lot of companies that offer, or if any of them do. So I know Travel Insured that Blue Ribbon Bags is unique. Book your trip with me, contact me. A link to Travel Insured below in the comments and in the description if you want to shop through their policies. But hopefully we're working together on a trip.
Yes.
And again, if this is your first time tuning in, I'm Melissa. I am a travel advisor. I own Pixie Dust Adventures, and I hope you're planning your next trip through me. You'll find me at pixiedustadventures.com. I want to thank Lisa very, very much for being here and explaining all of these things, all these questions I get all the time about insurance.
I
So
want to thank you too, Melissa. I mean, you're one of the most professional travel advisors that I've worked with, and it's huge. It's a lot of people just think insurance as, they, like you say, they don't know what it is, they don't see the point, but it's so important as a travel professional to recommend it to your clients. You want them to be protected, you want to have that help and support. So, please work with Melissa. She'll take great care of you, and then should something happen on your trip, we are here to also help and support. And that's our whole goal. We want to make sure people are taken care of.
quick story on the out. I had someone else who worked with an off-brand insurance company they found online. They did eventually get paid, but it took 7 months of back and forth. And you guys paid much faster than that, right?
Yeah, no. And the other thing, another option people have, they just take insurance with maybe the cruise line. And they check a box and they think, great, now I'm covered. Again, if you kind of look into the benefits and the coverage that, the suppliers offer, the cruise lines, the tour operators, it's usually much more limited and much more restricted. And again, really does not usually have very strong medical. When you go third party, so to an independent travel insurance provider like Travel Insured, that's our whole business. That is our focus. We're not trying to sell cruises, we're not trying to sell hotels. We are focused on travel protection for the traveler. So again, I just think, going third party, going with you, Melissa, you're working directly with us. It's a win-win for everybody.
Right. And what I find is a lot of times insurance through a third party is even more economical with better coverage.
True.
So it's
Yeah, and
win-win.
our rates are, yeah, we are super competitive. We redid a lot of our products at the end of last year, and we really are, I would say, some of the most competitive pricing in the space, plus with very strong coverage. So, again, it's on both sides.
Great coverage and great support when you need it. You're not talking to somebody in another country or who
No,
doesn't speak
we're
English.
US based. Our call center is US based. Yeah, our head office is up in Connecticut. Our parent company, Crum and Forster, is up in New Jersey. We are US based. Anyone that you speak to will be here in the US.
All right. So much good information from Lisa and Travel Insured. And again, I appreciate you being here with me. And my name is Melissa, and you will find me at pixiedustadventures.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.